Now to the latest on that former Corpus Christi doctor accused of sexual assault who was found earlier this month in Panama. Authorities say Dr. Jaime Sandoval has had his probation revoked and has been sentenced to 2 years in state prison. You may remember Sandoval had been cleared of sexual assault toward some of his patients back in April, but court documents say he was on probation for an unrelated case and violated some of his bond conditions and fled the country. He was finally found in Panama earlier this month and booked into the Miami jail before being returned to Nueces County. If he is released early, court documents say he will be put on parole. He remains in Nueces County Jail tonight.